Here's someone who's definitely been keeping a close watch on particularly the Chagos Islands, and that is Andrew Rosindell. He was, until the weekend, a Tory MP for Romford and a former shadow and foreign minister. He is now one of the latest Reform UK MP and joins us now. A very good morning to you, Andrew.
Julia, good to see you again.
Thank you so much for joining us. Let's just talk about, first of all, Chagos Islands, because you cited the Tory position on the Chagos Islands as one of the reasons for your defection. Can you explain to us why?
So I have been actively engaged in the campaign for the Chagos Islands in my entire time in Parliament over 25 years. This is a British sovereign territory with a major security base, which we lease to the Americans. However, the Foreign Office for many years tried to puppeteer a policy of letting Mauritius take the British Indian Ocean territory away from us. I opposed this throughout, and I believe that the Chagos Islands belong to the Chagosian people. Like with the Falkland Islands, like with Gibraltar, like all of our overseas territories, it is the people whose ancestral home is those islands that should determine the future.
Weren't most Chagosians moved off those islands when that Diego Garcia base was?
Yes, they were forcibly, shamefully taken
That's
away.
what life was like when these things, wasn't it 1950s, was it? Things happened?
It was the late 60s, early 70s.
Late 60s, early 70s. Well,
okay. So I'm sorry, it wasn't acceptable. It was a complete denial of human rights and self-determination. Julia, we had lots of colonies all around the world, but every single one of them had self-determination. They could choose whether to be independent, become a republic, stay a British territory, whatever. This is the one colony that we denied the rights of the people.
So how do you balance the rights of Chagosians with the needs for us to keep this vital strategic base?
So the Chagosians want to stay British. The reason why this whole mess has occurred is the Conservative government started the whole thing. Yeah. I opposed it from day one, argued against it, but they just brushed it away and carried on with this negotiation till David Cameron put it on ice. Good for him. But previously our policy was not to give self-determination and to eventually hand it to Mauritius. I opposed that all the way through. So Conservatives started this whole rotten mess. Labour got in and they carried on with it.
And then there was
they made it worse.
The issue in, with Lord Herman and that, but then there was issue last week in the House of Lords in terms of the Lords trying to kind of delay this, to allow this bill to hand over Chagos and then, again, it's not a hand over. Mauritius never owned the Chagos Islands, and then pay them for the privilege of then leasing back our own territory, the air base. But the Lords were supposed to be trying to delay this until basically it got talked out, and then that didn't happen.
The Lords should have taken it to the wire, fought to the bitter end. This was not in the Labour manifesto. All normal conventions don't apply in that situation. So the Conservative line should have been, we will fight it to the bitter end. This is a total betrayal, not only of our national security, of the British taxpayer paying 35 billion or whatever it's going to be, but also the most thing for me is the absolute betrayal of the Chagosian people.
And do you think that Donald Trump's posts on this, I mean, among the many posts, I mean, things could get lost, but of course this one is specifically about Keir Starmer. Apparently his big buddy, Keir Starmer thinks he's one of the, the Trump whisperers, and he's got that close access. And he's basically in Keir Starmer giving away the Chagos Islands for no reason whatsoever. And he says in an act of great stupidity. Do you think this changes anything?
Yes, I do. And Nigel Farage has been working away, speaking to all of his many contacts in Washington, because he has influence there, which unfortunately a lot of our politicians don't have. I'm not sure that Keir Starmer has anything like the influence or respect from Donald Trump that he thinks he's got. And the statement issued by the president today shows that at last the president's woken up to this. And I think the Greenland situation has played a part, actually, because how can you possibly say there is sovereignty for the Greenland and the Greenlandic people, which is a small, in terms of population, a small territory, but you can't have the rules don't apply to the Chagosian people. So I think the United States president's woken up. Thank God he's done just in time. And the government should now dump this whole
Well, I mean,
shocking betrayal.
this is definitely 11th hour. I mean, Nigel Farage, leader of your new party, has written, "Thank goodness Trump has vetoed the surrender of the Chagos Islands." We were always expecting that it would. White House, of course, previously had actually said it was fine. In another post, he wrote, "The Americans have woken up to the fact they were lied to. They were told the UK had no choice but to surrender the Chagos Islands. This was simply not true, and now they are angry with us." Again, it sounds like people haven't been doing their homework. Kemi Badenoch, your old party leader, said, "Paying to surrender the Chagos Islands is not just an act of stupidity, but of complete self-sabotage." And no doubt at all about all of that. We'll see what happens there. Let's also talk about your leaving the Conservative Party. You've been a lifelong Tory. You've been one of the longest-standing Conservative MPs, MP for Romford. You say it was a Chagos issue. Was that not something you could stay forward about, or were there other issues that also made you say, "Do you know what? I think I've actually got views that are much closer to reform than they are to Tory now"?
So I was reform before reform ever existed in terms of its political stance, and I've argued for those style of policies in the Conservative Party for many years. We should be a proper Thatcherite Conservative Party, but unfortunately in those 14 years we seem to have lost our way dreadfully. And yes, you're quite right. There were two issues that for me in the last week or two that really upset me. Firstly was the Chagos situation. I felt the Conservatives hadn't really fought it the way we should have done. But secondly, the way Robert Jenrick was thrown under a bus last week. I know that it's complicated, and
if you find out someone's going to leave, I thought she played an absolute blinder.
Well, I disagree. Julia, Robert represented vast swathes of our members and supporters. She should have phoned him up, pleaded with him not to go, met him personally, talked it through. To lose Robert, frankly, means we have no one on the right of the party now who potentially could become the leader, seriously. And it's almost like it feels like it's the end of the Conservative Party being anything like a reform-style party. Now, had we been a reform-style party, reform wouldn't exist. Had we not been so mushy during those 14 years, and had, well,
if you'd done any of the things you said you'd do, that would have been a good, instead of the opposite.
The net zero madness we sucked up, the immigration, the woke political correctness, we didn't really fight that back. We didn't reverse any of Blair's constitutional vandalism. I mean, it goes on and on and on. The mistakes and the failures and the missed opportunities. I'm very frustrated, have been for a long time, but I have been a loyal Conservative for 45 years, 25 years as MP, but enough is enough. It's time to put our country first. And I think Nigel is the only person who's able and got the gumption and the energy and the patriotism to do this in a serious way, because we do need radical reform in our country today.
And you say the gumption. I think a lot of people make that point, that actually Kemi Badenoch will say the right things. There may be issues that, like the wokedom and things like that she's spoken out on long before many others. I would say long before actually lots of things that Nigel Farage had, but, on trans and things like that, where it affects women. But lots of people do feel, who've voted Tory many times, but perhaps either voted Reform or didn't vote at all at the last general election in July 24, that, well, doesn't matter what the Tories say, because they're not going to do what they say, like Boris Johnson, take back control, and then basically having the Boris wave. I mean, literally, come on in, anybody from a third world country, come and live and work in our country on minimum wage, and we'll subsidise you. I mean, I think that kind of was really the last straw for a lot of people.
You're right, Julia, and I think that when I speak to people in Romford, and I do all the time, they're lifelong Conservatives. They've always voted for me. They're saying to me constantly, "We feel let down. We feel that we voted loyally for the Conservative Party, but when you're in power, you just didn't do the things you said you would do, and people don't trust us anymore. They're disillusioned."
Shouldn't you hold a by-election? I said this to Robert Jenrick yesterday. I think if there's not an election due within the next year, you should hold a by-election. You were elected, whether people support your policy or not, you were elected with a blue rosette, not a turquoise rosette.
There's only one election I'm focusing on, and that is in 2.5, 3 years' time, winning the general election.
Yeah, but you're going to be sitting as an MP for a party that was not elected to your seat for that time.
I am the same person they voted for, with the same beliefs, the same values. This is a move to ensure that at the next general election, I'm part of a new movement that's going to rescue Britain from the calamity of this Labour government. No more distractions, pointless, costly by-elections. Let's get on with the job.
I don't care how much they cost. Democracy is expensive. Otherwise, we just have a totalitarian state and never bother having elections.
As you know, Julia, in our country, you vote for an individual, and I was elected by the people of Romford, and I represent their views. And that's one of the reasons I've gone to reform, because I speak to everyone in Romford, and they all say to me, Andrew, you've got to do this. So many have said that to me.
So you've actually had support on this. Well, in that case, you wouldn't be worried about having a by-election then, would you?
I'm worried about wasting time when there's more
wasting time. Democracy's wasting time.
We go around in circles.
No, we're not. We're not. You're giving me lots of different reasons. Wasting time, money. I think democracy matters. I think that people should be. I think we all know people technically vote for an individual, but actually a lot of people vote with the they look at the rosette.
Democracy does matter, and that's why we have to get this terrible government out, because they're undermining our democracy. It's this government that's abolishing elections, for goodness sake.
Just one final question I want to ask you about. Nisa Nandi at the weekend basically didn't deny that she'd said that a Farage government would be a fascist government. She said, oh, it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, quacks like a duck, or whatever. She wouldn't use the actual word in public, but apparently did use it in private. What do you say to her and others who claim that Nigel Farage and the Reform Party are fascists?
How dare she? How dare she insult not just Nigel, but how dare she insult the millions of decent, patriotic, hard-working British people who feel like they want to vote reform because they love their country and want to see real change. It doesn't make them fascists. It doesn't make them far right. All this name-calling is an absolute disgrace. It's actually very un-British. If you disagree with someone, you have polite debate. You don't name-call. You don't attack people and use language like that. And so Lisa Nandy should be utterly ashamed of herself in doing so.
Andrew Rosindell, great to talk to you. Thank you so much. The new Reform UK MP for Romford, defected from the Tories. Philip Ingram, just your response to general conversation there?
Well, a number of things that came out of that. One, I think what Nigel Farage has got that Keir Starmer hasn't got and Kemi Badenoch hasn't really got is charisma. And the second thing that came out is reform, the new Thatcherites.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's my thing. So people say, well, reform is far right. They're clearly not. Reform is just where the Conservative Party was 20 years ago. Again, in the middle, in the centre ground of British politics, in my view, there is nothing extreme about having border control and putting people in prison who commit crimes, and it's requiring people to work
and that's what
if they're able-bodied. There's nothing far right or fascist about any of those policies.
And Labour and the Tories are the uni party.
Yeah, there we are. 10:46 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to talk about Prince Harry's latest battles with the media, with media lawyer Mark Stevens.